My advice to everybody is that like, it always seems impossible until it is done. It's a quote by Nelson Mandela. And we think the doctors gave me a 99% chance that I would not survive this thing at all. They literally told me that you will not survive this. And so I say, well, hey, there's a 1% and it's there. So I'll do what it takes to get to the 1%, whatever I got to do. And I truly believe that's what's happened. And so people think that's impossible. Doctors think it's impossible, but it's not until you actually take action to achieve something in your life, whether it's your dreams, or creating your new life that you want, or if you're depressed and think that it can never go away, or if you lost a loved one or you lost a relationship, you think you can never get a new one or anything like it, no doubt about it. You can get the life you always want, no matter how old or young or whatever you are, you can always achieve the impossible. And that's my message to everybody.
Welcome to the Onward Podcast. This is Emily Harmon, your host. My guest today is Logan Sneed. Logan is a brain cancer survivor and an entrepreneur whose online business generated a six-figure income before his 21st birthday. A stage 4 cancer diagnosis did not derail Logan's desire to reinvent himself every day and to pursue the dreams he wasn't ready to give up. Today, Logan is an inspirational public speaker, a social media influencer, a ketogenic diet expert, and a best self coach with a passion for personal transformation. Logan is only 24 years old, and in his book, Thank You Cancer, and in this interview, Logan shares wisdom that for many of us takes a lifetime to learn. Logan, welcome to the Onward Podcast.
Thank you. It's awesome to be here.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to interviewing you. I don't always have time to read the books. Didn't finish 100% of your book, but I got your book and I started reading it, and it's got all these highlights in it because it's like, wow, you're 24, and how old were you when you wrote this book?
Yeah, I was 20. Well, it was about a 1.5 year journey. I actually hand wrote the whole thing. So it's about 1.5 years, and I started, I would say 22. Yeah, 22, I think.
22 when you read this book. And it's like, it's got the knowledge of somebody who's like 122 or something like that. I mean, you've learned so much about life, and I can't wait to talk to you about it and then learn what your future plans are and everything.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that.
And your book is called Thank You Cancer, although thank is written over another word that I can't really say on my podcast. An F-U-K. So tell us a little bit about your story to get started. Introduce yourself to the listeners.
Yeah. My name is Logan Sneed. I'm the founder and CEO of fitpreneuracademy.com. I'm a 4-year glioblastoma brain cancer survivor. And it's kind of a, long story short. And as I'm going through the story, interrupt me if you need to, because I don't want to, go on too long and then you have so many questions for it. But yeah, so, one day it was March 6th of 2016. I was in college. I was a freshman. No, excuse me. Freshman in college. And I was, on a spring break. And I came back down from Sam Houston State to go visit my family for the spring break. My girlfriend and I were together all the way through high school, now in college. And we came back together. Her family is same place, same location, or same neighborhood as mine. So we came back and stuff, whatever. And one day I was going to the gym. I was like feeling really good. And I was like hyped up, ready to go to the gym. And suddenly I was in a great mood. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to surprise my girlfriend and just, FaceTime her while I'm just going to the gym and just kind of say, hey, hope you're doing great today. Miss you. And I'll see you tomorrow, whatever. Right. So I did that while I was driving. And I've never in my life thought of the idea of doing that while I was driving. I don't know why. It just popped up in my mind and I did it. And suddenly as I was FaceTiming her, I suddenly started having a seizure. I started slurring my words, and I knew in my mind what I was trying to say, but the words just wouldn't come out of my mouth. And it was the weirdest feeling I've ever had in my life. So she watched me have a seizure while I was driving. And again, I've never had a seizure in my life. So it's no signs, no symptoms, nothing ever before until this one moment. And thankfully, I drove half a mile unconscious, and then I drove off the road into a little bit of a ditch. There was actually no damage, no injury, no nothing. And suddenly she knew where I was going. So, which is a good thing. She knew where I was going, and she immediately called the ambulance to come and get me. And she said, yeah, I don't know where he's at, but I know where he's going. So they found me over there. They had to break into my car because everything was locked and I was still unconscious. And suddenly they take me to the hospital. I'm still unconscious. I don't even know what's going on. I then wake up in the hospital. I'm like, what the heck is going on here? I'm like, what's going on? So they're like, Logan, you had a seizure. And I was like, a seizure? I'm like, I've never had that in my life. And so they had to analyze and figure out like, what was the cause of all this stuff? And so my parents are there like, what in the world is going on? And the doctor's like, well, does he do drugs? Like, is he on any drugs? They're like, no, like you can test him. And of course they test me and there's nothing there. And they're like, yeah, we have no idea. I mean, the only thing that I can think of for a random seizure that anyone would ever have is just doing an MRI to see like what could be going on. So suddenly I had an MRI the next day and I wasn't nervous at all. My mom and my girlfriend at the time were like really, really nervous. And they even were like crying. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on here. Like, what's the big deal?
So they kept you overnight in the hospital? They were that concerned that they kept you overnight?
No, they actually didn't.
Because you were like fine, right? You had the seizure and then they thought, well, okay. So you went back the next day.
Yeah. They were like, yeah. I was like, yeah, I'm fine. I don't know what the problem is here. And they were like, yeah, well, go on home, but tomorrow we're gonna do an MRI. We're just gonna see if we can dissect anything here. So I go and get that MRI, and then after that, they analyze it and they said, okay, hey, look, there's something in your brain. Now we can't say this is a tumor or this is like a mass, but there's something there. So they called it a mass, just something that takes up space. So the neurologist looks at it and is like, hey, this thing's pretty big. I would probably go see a neurosurgeon and see what his thoughts are on potentially removing this or just letting it sit there.
How big was it? Like
it was a full egg, perfect egg.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could show the picture on here, but it's a perfect egg, literally like identical to an egg. So yeah, the first surgeon I saw here in Austin, he was like, hey, Logan, good to meet you, man. Hey, real quick, I just want you to know that if we do a surgery here for what I'm looking at, like, you probably won't be able to speak or hear after this surgery due to where the tumor is at. And I'm like, whoa. So
forever? For the rest of your life?
Forever. Yeah, just that's it. And so I was like, wow, okay, well, thanks, man. Like, not sure really what to do here. So it's either like, I let a tumor sit there and then die over time and I can still talk and hear, or I get the thing removed, potentially live longer and then not be able to speak or hear. So anyways, we leave that appointment, and my parents thankfully are like, you know what? We can find somebody better. Like there's somebody better out there who can give a different answer. Like that guy, he's not confident. He doesn't have the mindset that is about, achieving the impossible. Like he's basically giving up on his own job before it's even began. So we're like, yeah, let's move on. So thankfully we were connected with the #1 brain surgeon in the world. And if anyone's looking for a surgeon, I hope no one's not, but if they are, like Dr. Raymond Sawaya is the #1 surgeon in the world. And I asked him the question, I was like, hey, doctor, like, will I be able to speak or hear after this? Because the first guy I saw said that I wouldn't be able to. And he was like, dude, he's like, if I'm doing this, like, that's not a problem at all. I got you in this. And I was like, really? I was like, whoa. Okay. Yeah. Like literally this is the most intense job in the world. And these two guys are giving two completely different answers, which blows my mind. So then he goes, well, hey, just want you to know, we're going to have to do surgery tomorrow morning as soon as possible.
Did they know it was cancer at that time or not still?
No, they didn't know, but he knew and was like, wow, that's big. Like we got to get that out as soon as possible. Like we don't know if it's cancerous or not, but we just got to get it out because it's huge. And so that next morning I had to have brain surgery. It was like 6 a.m. Go in there, I get strapped down to the little stretcher thing. And, they bring in like people to, do prayers. And like, it's a very just like movie scene where it's like, hey, you're, basically betting your life away and hopefully nothing happens. But if it does, this is what we got to do. So yeah, then I go into the surgery and it was about seven and a half hour surgery. And they actually they were preparing me and telling me like, hey, we're going to wake you up in the surgery to ask you some questions, make sure that, you can talk, you can hear, you can, your brain's still functioning so you can answer the questions. And I was like, okay. So
wow.
Yeah, they woke me up and like, I was just trying to do everything I can to act so smart in a way where it's like, hey, how you doing? I'm like, I'm doing great. Thank you. Let's keep this going. You know what I'm saying? Like just so that they could like keep removing the tumor and like where they don't have to cut it short, because I'll kind of explain that in a little bit. But anyways, they removed the whole tumor. It was 100% removed, which is like phenomenal. Like it's very rare for a tumor that I had to be fully removed. They said literally it's like a less than 1% chance for a glioblastoma to be fully removed, because essentially the way that it looks, like GBM tumors look like octopuses. So like this is an octopus, and then like they have tentacles right here. And so they end up removing like 70 or 80% of the tumor. And then what happens is these up here form together and they create another tumor that's even bigger and badder. So
wow.
Yeah. So once that whole thing was done, I felt great. I was literally out of the hospital in like a day and a half, and I was already going home. But my parents and everyone else there was a little nervous to like hear what the diagnosis was. Honestly, I didn't even die. Like I was just like, all right, life goes on. Let's keep rolling. I've never in my mind, like brain cancer, I never in my life thought about that. Not one time. Right. Maybe I've heard a story or two. I never in my life thought of that. So like I wasn't nervous or anything. Then it was like a week later, they come back and like, we do the diagnosis. And so we go sit in there or whatever. My mom is pretty nervous. I mean, a mom should be,
Yeah.
So we go in there and then the doctor comes in, and it's this one lady. And when you're introduced to somebody or you introduce yourself, you always look them in the eyes, which is everyone should. She didn't do that. She just kind of like had her head down like this, shaking. And I'm like, all right, something's weird here. Like this isn't right. So anyway, she kind of sits down and is like, hey, Logan, Phil, Cindy, good to meet you guys. I just want to let you guys know, this is going to be a stage 4 glioblastoma tumor. And so I was like, whoa. Like, first off, I didn't even really understand what that meant, to be honest with you. And so she was like, well, so this is a cancerous tumor and it is a stage 4. And it is the most difficult tumor to handle that there is. And of course, I don't know how much worse you can basically tell me that. Like, I mean, it couldn't get any worse. And so she was like, I'm very sorry, but it looks like you have about 1 to 10 years left to live. And we really can't do anything about this. This is something that we'll just kind of have to play it out. We'll do the chemotherapy, we'll do the radiation, but there's really just nothing we can do. So, this we'll have to do. And so I'm like,
they got the whole tumor out, right?
Yeah, they did. And that's where these things get a little confusing. If you really like think about it, like they removed the whole tumor and they said that like, literally I talked to a neuro-oncologist who does research through the Keto Diet and brain tumors. And he was like, dude, there's no way they removed your whole, like, there's like no way it's a GBM if they remove the whole thing or vice versa. And so that's just what blows my mind. And so my dad was sitting there and he was like, well, hold on. So like, what should we do about this? I don't know. Should he like stop eating this or that, or you eat this or eat that, or I don't do this or that? What should he do here? She's like, well, there's nothing we can do. Like you just can't do anything. He was like, okay, well, hold on. So you're telling my son, by the way, I wasn't 21 at the time. He was like, so you're telling my son, like he can go eat a burger and then have a beer and like, that's not going to do anything. Like, that's it. And she was like, yeah, that's what I'm saying. And so we're like, what the heck? Like, I was shot in the face. Like, I didn't in my mind immediately think like, oh, well, you know what? Forget the doctor. Like, I'm going to figure out my answer. Right. Of course, I'm shot like she has the number one most difficult job in the world and most intelligent human beings in the world. And if somebody like that's telling you this, how could you almost like not dive in and believe what they're saying? Like, it's very difficult to know. So anyways, we leave that. And that's where like my whole new life began for the better. It went 2 to 3 weeks, just like so like lost of like, okay, why am I even alive? Like I'm taking up time, space, money, energy, everything. And so what's the point? And my parents are doing research on like other things to do, like holistic approach or anything like that, really. Even if it added on a year of my life, that's literally like anything. So what happened is that it was maybe about less than a month later, right when I left, I was doing chemo orally. So I was doing oral chemo, which is just pills. And then I was doing radiation every day. And so during that time, I actually saw no side effects at all, or no side effects of like dizziness, tiredness, any of that stuff. And that was what was really interesting, because they were like, oh yeah, you're going to have these side effects. And I'm like, you like think I'm going to have it, or do you know I'm going to have it? Like, no, you will have it. I didn't have any of them. And so I was out here paddleboarding in Austin, just on this river right here, with a good friend of mine who was a mentor of mine. And we were just kind of catching up, just because like it was weeks later, I was getting texts, calls, everything. And so we were just chatting. He's like, how you doing? And I was like, dude, honestly, like, I really don't know how I'm doing, because I don't even know what I'm supposed to do. Like, do I just sit here and die, or do I like try and do something about it? And he was like, well, have you ever heard of the ketogenic diet? And then, by the way, this is like 4 years ago. No one knew what the ketogenic diet was. This is like not even born yet. And I was like, no, I was like, what is that? And he was like, well, it's actually a high fat, medium protein, low carb diet. And I was like, hey, that's really weird, but tell me more. And he was like, well, yeah. So essentially, I was in Hawaii, and there was basically an island of people, like where it's all these families, and they all do the ketogenic diet. And there's been research showing that it can improve fat loss, can actually shrink tumors or prevent tumor regrowth. It also helps epilepsy, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's disease, depression, anxiety, like all these sort of things, fat loss, everything. So like in my mind, I'm just like, all right, I don't really know what it is, but I'll check it out and I'll do whatever I can to make the most of it. So I went into this not thinking of like, oh, hopefully it works. I went into it thinking I'll make it work, because I got no other option. Either I'm on death row or I figure this thing out and make the most of it. So I went into it with that mindset, and I stayed up till like 2 a.m. in the morning that night, just researching this thing right and left. So I was super intrigued. And then that next day, I did the whole keto diet, and I learned as I went. I didn't like master it and then do it. So I just did as best I can. And I've done it for 4+ years now. And yeah, there's not a single inch of any tumor in my brain. I've had MRIs for almost 5 years now. And I've been able to actually start my own online business because of that. And I've been able to build 2 6-figure businesses and drop out of college, do this for a living, all these sort of things. And yeah, it's been like so rewarding in a way where it's like, I'm blessed to say that I had brain cancer, and I wish I didn't have it, but I did. And if I didn't have that, I wouldn't have been able to change the lives I've been able to change, do what I do for a living, have the freedom I have, and fulfill the dreams that I've always wanted to achieve, all because of these crazy roadblocks and the things that have happened. So
what do the doctors think about cancer-free for this long and everything, and the keto diet? What do they say?
So that's what's hard, is that I know doctors have a tough job, especially neuro-oncologists. They can't say, oh yeah, well, the keto diet will 100% cure your brain cancer. Go do it. Because if God forbid it doesn't happen, then it's on them. But they in their mind, they just kind of say, hey, if it's working, keep doing it. Yeah. They don't say, oh wow, yeah, it's working phenomenally well. Because they're trying to do everything they can to protect themselves. And I've just tried to tell them like, hey, if you guys want to use me as a test dummy for anything, like any trials, whatever you guys want to do, like, please let me know, because that's what I'm here for. So they're for it. They're not against it. They're just trying to stay right there in the middle and do nothing about it.
So what are these businesses that you've started?
Yeah. So my first business was called fusionlean.com, and kind of going back into the story where I had that seizure that one day. After I had the seizure, after I was diagnosed and all those sort of things, I was still in college with my girlfriend at the time. And I was going through oral chemo, radiation, and where I was doing that was actually near the university. And so I was still going to school and I was doing all those things. And I started my business, which is called fusionlean.com. And that's where I was able to transform my own life physically. And people were like, their mind was blown of like, how in the world are you seeing these results by eating food like that? Like, that's crazy.
I've seen your pictures. You're strong.
Thank you. But
really transformed your body.
Yeah. That's what blew everyone's mind. And so suddenly, like, I was like, you know what? I was like, I'm going to start a business, because like no one's doing this keto diet thing, and I'm getting asked a million questions. So let's just see what happens. And yeah, I started doing that. It started going phenomenally well. And in the middle of all that, it was probably worse than the diagnosis, to be honest with you. But I was with my girlfriend for 4 years at the time. We were together from sophomore year of high school all the way to sophomore year of college. And it was just randomly, like out of the blue, like one day, like a Saturday morning, I woke up with like the longest text message I've ever read in my entire life. And she basically just broke up with me over a text. And I've never chatted with her again. Like I've never had a legitimate conversation on anything, not one time. Her parents follow me on social media. They like, her dad actually called me last week, but I've never seen her. We've never had a legitimate conversation. And I was like,
how do you deal with that?
Oh man, it took me way longer to get over than even the diagnosis, because I felt like I felt in my life, like, yeah, I had my family, had a few friends, but she was there with me literally every single day. Like we were together every single day for 4 years, and it's all gone. And so like, that's all I felt that I had left. And whenever she broke up with me, I had literally no friends in college. I mean, I had maybe a few, but I was very entrepreneurial. So I was always trying to work on something. Mm-hmm. So I didn't have any friends at all. All my other friends were at different colleges and stuff like that. And so once the business was able to go well enough, I dropped out like as soon as possible. Like she broke up with me and I was like, okay, I'm getting out of here. Like, I don't like college. Like, I'm not getting anything out of this. I'm trying to build a business. So I'm like, I'm done. I'm out. And so that was super, super hard. I lived with my family for a little bit and I felt very lonely. It was basically just a new life. And I'm glad it happened, but it was extremely difficult.
Yeah. It's always easier to say you're glad something happened after, a long time after it's happened and you're able to get back on your feet.
Yeah, for sure.
So Fusion Lean is about helping people get in shape?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And then, you still have that company?
I do. Yeah. So it still operates, but what I do is I coach people on how to build their own online fitness business, and it's called fitpreneuracademy.com. So I coach them. Yeah, I coach them like through the whole thing of like that I've been able to do on building my own business. So
that's good. And I bet you now with COVID, I don't know, is that helping your business?
Oh yeah, it definitely is. Yeah, trainers right and left are like, all right, I need to go online. No other option. So
right. And then you're able to really like, instead of tell people about the results, you're able to show them the results too.
Exactly. Yeah.
Pictures in your book. So how did it feel when I'm showing you a picture in your book with your huge scar?
I think it was kind of cool. It was like I didn't lose all my hair, which I'm grateful for.
Oh, you didn't? Okay.
No, yeah, I never lost all my hair in the chemo because it was oral chemo. But yeah, it was a super gnarly scar. And when you go to like a restaurant or you go somewhere, like people are like freaked out, like what in the name of whatever like is that? And so yeah, it was interesting. Definitely was pretty I don't know. It was almost like a cool feeling in a way.
So tell us about your book, Thank You, Cancer. Did you start writing? You said you hand wrote it. Did you start writing with the idea of writing a book, or was it just journaling to help you get through tough times? What about that?
Yeah. So my book is essentially about overcoming and achieving the impossible. So like we've all been through certain things, or we might still be going through certain things in our life, depression, suicide thoughts, or literally anything like diagnosis, family loss, anything. And we think that I totally understand, but those things are like, we think it's like destroying our life, or it's like it's bad things happening to us. And sure, it can be at the beginning, but over time we can realize it's been a gift to us in our life. And so that's what I totally realized with, the breakup, the diagnosis, the chemo, radiation, all these sort of things. And I just one day, like I took a snapshot or a Snapchat photo. I posted it in my story. I was like, I don't know how long this will take, but I'm going to write a whole book and I'll see you guys on the other side. And unfortunately, I deleted my Snapchat, but it took me about 1.5 years. And all I did was I just wrote 1 page a day. Like I literally just started day 1. All right, page 1. Okay, now day 2, page 2. And literally did that for a whole 1.5 years. And there were some times where I didn't write a page a day. I was like, I'm not feeling this. Like I don't want to force myself. And so, yeah, I just hand wrote the whole thing.
Well, your book isn't just about cancer though, too. Sure. I just read through, you've got week 1, inner fortitude. And you shared what your thoughts were, and trust and pain, despair, determination, growth. Those are your different chapters in week 1. Week 2 is like forward motion. Week 3 is honoring your self-worth. Week 4 is connection. And then finish strong. Nothing's impossible. And you've got this self-worth chapter that starts on page 99. I highlighted some things in here. It's like, you're fortunate that you've learned so much at such a young age. So some people don't figure this out for a while, but you said on page 100, we spend so much time thinking about being good enough for her. Let's see, what was that? We're taking that you weren't growing as a person, but you said we spend so much time thinking about being good enough for her, good enough for him, good enough to be liked, good enough to succeed, that we forget to be good enough for ourselves.
Exactly.
And until we value ourselves first, it's always going to be a struggle to find the confidence and really feel like we're bringing value to the world. Many people never learn that, Logan.
Yeah.
How did you learn that?
Yeah, I just I went through a time where it was like, hey, either you die or you make the most of it and you literally create the best version of yourself and you do whatever it takes to keep living. And so in that journey, of course, it's not just a diet change. It's so much more to that. It's the mindset change. It's the belief. It's the consistency, the persistency, all those sort of things. And in that entire journey, I've been able to grow so much. And rather than me thinking of like, I need to go to college, or I need to do this or that, it's like, focus on yourself. And a lot of people think that they think that when people focus on themselves, they think it's selfish. But I think the best thing that people can do is actually be selfish and focus on themselves. Because if somebody, like, for example, like I was working on myself so much that people were like, what are you doing? Like, how does that work? And, you're reducing stress. Like, what are you doing? So I tell them, teach them. They follow my journey. They do it with me. Then their life has changed. And that's all because I decided to focus on myself. And that's really how I grew.
Did you have counselors or coaches that you worked with, or was it from reading or just the writing and figuring things out? What was it?
It was just blood, sweat, and tears, writing, reading, experimenting, doing, and all those sort of things. Yeah, I never had a mentor or coach or anything.
I kept my eyes on the vision, which helped me move forward in my business and health goals. But I hadn't really thought about myself. The journey isn't really about becoming an athlete or a millionaire or a coach. It's about becoming the best version of ourselves. And until I grew my own self-worth and understood who I was, I would always be pulled down by external voices telling me who they thought I was: a cancer patient, a hacker, a loner, a dropout. The labels became a leash that drags us down and holds us back, or they become a leash that drags us down and holds us back. The only way to counter them is to understand who we really are. So that's, I lead this movement. It's called the Onward Movement. And it's all about discovering our authentic selves. And my story, just a little bit, is that I joined the military at age 17. That's when I made the decision to go to the Naval Academy. And then I went to the Naval Academy, got out, was in the Navy, then got married, then had kids and got divorced. And I felt like I was always taking care of other people, just focused on doing a good job, looking down, doing the best I could, taking care of my kids. And then now that they're raised, 24 and 27, and I'm able to retire, it's like, who am I and what do I want? And I think your generation is more so looking at that. And a lot of people your age are thinking, like my daughter and my son, for a while, he ended up going to college, but thinking, why should I go to college? With the internet, that brings you a lot of different opportunities. And so I'm helping other people like you are with the journey, after the journey I went through, discovering my inner self. That's what I want to help, because I see so many women my age in their 50s. They're like, I'm done raising kids. I'm done with this, done with that. But it's like, what do I want to do next? And we could have 50 more years to live.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You learned it at age 20.
Hey, I'm glad I experienced the horrible things as soon as possible. I mean, I'm not predicting my life as a whole, but I've been able to go through a lot of those horrible things, and I'm grateful for it. So
yeah, it's awesome. So you talk about confidence in this book. You talk about commitment, doubt. So you address that you had doubt and all of that stuff. So I think this is just an amazing book. It's not just for somebody who has survived cancer. It's for anybody. I'm going to recommend this to the people in my Onward movement, because I know they can learn from it. I'll recommend it to my kids too, but kids, they don't always do what their parents say.
Yeah. I wanted to keep it very simple because, for like it's 30 chapters. So like each chapter is like a day of reading. So if you just read one chapter a day, like you can have it done in 30 days and it's not even that long of a book. And I do it like that. So you're always thinking about the next steps in your life and always progressing each day. Yeah.
I love this part on page 43. We all have the voices in our heads, a choice of which one to listen to: doubt and hope, hell and heaven, failure and success, defeat and reassurance. Whichever voice we listen to is the direction we'll move towards. So if your vision, habits, or lifestyle are stuck, think about the voices you're listening to. Who is controlling you? Who's going to win? So what was your childhood like up until you went to college? I mean, what influence did your parents have on your ability to move onward after this cancer diagnosis?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very, very grateful that my parents they're very entrepreneurial. They're very, go-getters. They're not sitting around or anything like that. Like they're going to achieve things. And so my parents never like pushed me to like go, work hard. They showed it to me. Like they didn't say anything. They just showed it. And so I always was like, yeah, man, I was like, they're very successful, like great people. I'm like, yeah, I like that. And so I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. It was actually my dream. I know it's a weird dream, but it was my dream to be able to build a business and drop out of college one day because of the business. And so when I was diagnosed, I was diagnosed, and then like my parents saw something more. My mom was doing research for her, like just for this whole thing. She was doing research and I didn't even know it. And so she was putting in work to potentially help save my life. She was connecting me with the best doctors that there possibly could be. And my dad was always supporting me and giving me hope and those sort of things. And so because of that, it just gave me motivation, and I still wanted to be an entrepreneur. And like in that time period, I was like, I want to build a business, but I want to be an entrepreneur of my own life. I don't want to let a doctor determine like how my life is going to go, or like, hey, you're going to be dead here soon, so it's what you're going to do. Like, I didn't want that. I was like, I want to be my own entrepreneur, and I want to be my own boss and how I believe my life is going to go. So
yeah, I love that. Be an entrepreneur of your own life. Yeah, that's awesome. Do you have any brothers or sisters?
I do. I have a brother in freshman or sophomore in college, and then one brother, 7th grade.
Oh, okay. Wow. So what are the challenges of starting your own business? What would you recommend to entrepreneurs?
Oh man, I wouldn't say this was a problem of mine, because I've always had the mindset of like, I fear failure. And because I fear failure so much, I hold myself so accountable to things.
Why do you feel failure?
What's that?
Why do you feel failure? Fear failure.
Yeah. So here's kind of my insight is that like, I fear failure, but I face it. Okay. It's not like I fear in the sense of like, I'm running from it, rah. Like there's always a fear there, and people think that like fears don't happen. They're there, but it comes down to whether or not you can face it and accept it, or you can just try and run from it and it never even happens. So that's what my notion is, that like I shake hands with fear and know that I'm always going to win. So I would say accountability and consistency are the most difficult variables for people building a business, or discouragement of like one obstacle. Like they do it for a week and then something not good happens in the business, and they assume that means they can't do it, or that means it's not for them, or it's not really possible, or they just can't endure the overall journey of running into those obstacles. I think my biggest advice is that if you can accept things, like if you can accept the obstacles and accept the roadblocks that will happen in building a business, then you can get through it. If you can't accept those things, it's going to be very difficult, but if you can, no doubt about it, you can build your business.
Yeah. And you'll get through it. And you might look at people that, seem to have it all, that have this great business, but you've got to look back at what it took for them to get there, because they started with nothing and they figured it out and they kept going and they didn't quit when the going got tough. And I think also having a support network, other people that you can reach out to, maybe that are going through the same thing, that when you're feeling down, they can build you up. That helps me for sure. Exactly.
Absolutely.
Okay. So accountability to yourself, sticking to it, keep going. How did you, I think you didn't really need to test the market too much. There's always kind of a market for fitness, I guess, what I would say. Yeah.
I knew there was always a fat loss market. I was like, wait, I can go into this a little bit different than everyone else, because everyone else is kind of doing either macro counting or carb cycling or like whatever, like all the same sort of things. And then I was like, nobody's even showing this ketogenic diet, and this thing is brand new. And so I went in there and everyone turned their head like, what is that? And so that's what that's one of the reasons that really helped spark it pretty quick.
So how does keto, I'm skeptical of it because I'm pretty much a vegetarian, but how does keto and eating all that, you eat fat, right? And you eat meat.
Yeah. Well, that's the protein portion, but yeah.
How does it help with weight loss or with getting a 6-pack?
Yeah. So essentially so humans are naturally using sugar as fuel, right? So if you're consuming carbs as your fuel source, you're using the carbs/sugar as the fuel source. And I'm not saying carbs are like horrible by any means, but what happens is that if you do the ketogenic diet, your body now uses fat as fuel. So it uses the fat that you're eating, but it also uses the fat that's in your body. So it immediately goes into a state of ketosis, to where now you're utilizing either stored fat or fat that's coming in as your fuel source, and that's what you're energized on. And so the science shows that fat is longer lasting energy, and it basically keeps you more fueled without being hungry, without having food cravings, without having stress, and always feeling good. And so that's what I've noticed in 4 years, is that like I truly believe has played a huge role in like curing my stress and feeling great. My whole skin, I wasn't like full of acne, but I had pimples regularly. I mean, now literally like I haven't had a pimple in 4 or 5 years. And yeah, I'm never hungry. Like I'm not hungry. I never have cravings and I just feel better than ever. So
Wow, that's awesome.
yeah.
So do you meditate?
I do every night.
Do you have a morning routine? A lot of successful people have their little routine, a morning routine, or what is it what you do?
Yeah. So I do my meditation at night just to kind of prepare myself for bed, because a lot of people think that it's only about preparing yourself to wake up. They don't actually prepare themselves to go to bed, which is honestly more important than when you're waking up. So I do the meditation at night. And then as soon as I wake up, I feel amazing. And so literally I wake up and I go straight to work. Or like I immediately go to my family room or just right here behind me on the couch. I do an hour's worth of work. And so I get done the most important things for the first hour of the day right then and there. Like I don't do anything else, not a single thing. I've done this for over a year now. And it literally has like not only helped my day-to-day life, but my business and everything. So that's kind of my method. I know it's a little bit different than like all these other entrepreneurs. Mine is just wake up, get it going. That's it. So,
well, that's good. They say that to get the toughest things done when you're the most effective. So for you, you're most effective first thing in the morning. Some people, it might be like, especially if you're in an office environment, it might be, I stay a little later and once everyone leaves, it's quiet, but I like getting things done in the morning too.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Is there any question that I haven't asked you or something that you want to, another last minute tip that you want to share with the audience before we wrap up the interview?
Yeah, absolutely. My advice to everybody is that like, it always seems impossible until it is done. It's a quote by Nelson Mandela. And we think the doctors gave me a 99% chance that I would not survive this thing at all. They literally told me that you will not survive this. And so I say, well, hey, there's a 1%. And it's there. So I'll do what it takes to get to the 1%, whatever I got to do. And I truly believe that's what's happened. And so people think that's impossible. Doctors think it's impossible, but it's not until you actually take action to achieve something in your life, whether it's your dreams, or creating your new life that you want, or if you're depressed and think that it can never go away, or if you lost a loved one or you lost a relationship, you think you can never get a new one or anything like it, no doubt about it. You can get the life you always want, no matter how old or young or whatever you are, you can always achieve the impossible. And that's my message to everybody.
Well, thanks for being on the Onward podcast, Logan. I enjoyed talking with you.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Thank you so much.
Please buy Logan's book, Thank You Cancer, and read it. My book is covered in highlights. I put a link to his book in the show notes. I've started broadcasting some of my Onward podcast interviews live on LinkedIn and on Facebook in the Onward Movement Facebook group. Please join me live, and you can submit questions and engage in the conversation. It's really fun. I hope to see you there.